All right, let's dive right in. In this explainer, we're going to break down the command line interface for applications you've protected with PC Guard. We'll explore how you can use it to get some really precise control, automate your licensing, and just generally streamline your whole deployment workflow.
So, have you ever needed to automate the activation process for a really big deployment? Or maybe you wanted to integrate license management right into your build scripts? Well, these are the exact situations where the command line interface stops being just a nice-to-have and becomes an absolutely essential tool for automation. Here's a quick look at what we'll cover. We'll kick things off with the core commands, then we'll get into managing file paths. After that, we'll dive into the really powerful automation features, and we'll wrap it all up with some advanced utilities and a quick summary. So, let's get started with the basics.
First up, let's look at the fundamental commands. These are the ones you'll use to interact with your protected application right from the command line. Think of them as the foundational building blocks for everything else we're going to do.
Okay, so we've got two essential commands here. On the left, there's -pcg_cl_show, which is all about controlling the user interface. It forces that activation dialog to pop up. And on the right, we have -pcg_cl_sn. This one's for inputting data, letting you feed a serial number straight to the app. What's really crucial for scripting is that it will just silently ignore any invalid serials instead of throwing an error, which is super handy.
Now hold on. Before we go any further, this is absolutely critical to remember. All of these command line options are case sensitive. A lowercase s is not the same as an uppercase S, okay? Getting this wrong is a super common mistake, so just burn this into your memory. Now there's one major exception to the pcg_cl_show command. If you've set up your application to handle its own license management, through the advanced protection interface, then this command gets ignored. Basically, the application's own internal logic gets priority. Next up, let's talk about managing your file paths. These commands give you the flexibility to tell the application exactly where to find or create its essential files, completely overriding any of the default locations.
So you've got three main override commands here, one for the log file, one for the activation file, and one for the server config file. This is incredibly useful in environments where you have really strict folder permissions, or maybe you just want to centralize all your data, like sending all the logs to one specific monitoring directory.
Let's zoom in on the log file command for a second. The syntax is pretty straightforward. You have the command and then the full path. The two key things you have to remember are that the directory you're pointing to must already exist, and of course the application needs permission to actually write a file there.
And here's a perfect example. See the quotes around the path? This is so important. If your file path has any spaces in it, you absolutely must wrap the whole thing in double quotes. Otherwise, the command just won't be parsed correctly.
All right, now for the part I know many of you have been waiting for, full automation. This is where we cover how to activate a license without any user interaction at all. This is a total game changer for large-scale deployments.
The magic command here is -pcg_cl_autoactivate. It tells the application to just go ahead and try an online activation right away without showing any dialogues to the user. This is the main trigger for that whole silent activation process. Now, the real power comes from combining these commands. For web licensing, here's a fantastic tip. You pair -pcg_cl_sn to feed it the serial number with -pcg_cl_autoactivate to kick off the process, and just like that, you've got a complete one-step activation right from the command line.
So let's walk through it. Step 1. You provide the serial number with -pcg_cl_sn. Now, if you're using standard licensing, you'll also need to provide the client and order IDs. And then for the final step, you just add the -pcg_cl_auto_activate command to trigger the whole silent process.
And this is a point worth repeating. For that ACN standard licensing model, you must provide both the client ID and the order ID. It's not optional for automation. If you don't include both of those from the command line, the silent activation is just not going to work.
Okay, let's move on to our final set of commands. You can think of these as your specialized toolkit. They're for more unique tasks, like retrieving machine-specific info or managing the license state itself.
This little toolkit has some really handy commands. You can grab the site and machine ID codes for remote protection, you can set the UI language on the fly, and, if you've enabled a feature, you can even programmatically remove a license.
Let's focus on PCG Get Site-ID Mid for a moment, because this one's a little different. First, it only works if your application is using remote protection. Second, you have to redirect its output to a file, just like in the output.txt example. And third, as soon as it writes those codes to the file, the application just closes. It's designed to be a pure data retrieval tool, nothing more.
Okay, we have definitely covered a lot of ground, so let's do a quick recap of the powerful new command line toolkit you now have for managing your protected applications.
So, to sum it all up, you can now manually trigger the activation UI, you can control all your file locations, and you can completely automate the activation for both web and standard licenses. On top of that, you can retrieve unique machine codes, set languages, and even remove licenses, all from a simple script.
And that brings us to the end. You are now equipped with the knowledge to script and automate pretty much every part of the licensing process. So the only real question left is, which powerful workflow are you going to build first?